Here's JB Buno.
What's next in the investigation to the deaths of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie? After today, the medical examiner of District 12 in Sarasota County, Florida, releasing this document detailing that the cause of death is determined to be a gunshot wound of the head of Brian Laundrie. The manner of death determined to be a suicide. Where do things go from here? WFLA Now's JB Buno, 8 on your side. Senior investigator Walt Buteau here with you live on WFLA Now. We tracked down Walt. He's here with us now in the building. Walt, great to have you here on stream.
Good to be here.
As our audience kind of builds, we're going to allow folks to chime in. We really want to feature, in this stream in particular, we really want to feature your hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyWalt comments and questions, as we do here interactive journalism, as we do here on WFLA Now. Want to know what people are thinking out there, with how many people have been following this story. And how many people have been following you and I, Walt, and looking for answers. We want to make you, wherever you're watching from, very much part of the experience. So use hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyWalt, and we'll feature your comments. We'll animate them here on screen. But, Walt, I want to give you an opportunity, your first time here on stream today, just to kind of reveal your thoughts now that we have this information. Brian Laundrie dying of suicide, self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. This has been something that people have been talking about for weeks as to whether or not this was going to be the outcome. We now have it officially as the outcome from the medical examiner's office. And for those folks out there that have been saying, still, the conspiracy theorists out there that say that they still don't believe that Brian Laundrie is deceased, in this document, in the final bullet point, it's both dental comparison and DNA analysis. DNA analysis has been conducted, Walt, on the remains to confirm that those remains, yes, are in fact that of Brian Laundrie. What's your initial reaction to learning of this news and reading this document here today?
Well, I think it's interesting. Initially, suicide was not a surprise, I don't think, because we sort of had heard rumblings of that. The gun was a surprise, but then you think to yourself, how does one kill themselves in the middle of the woods without a gun? I think the biggest surprise about the weapon is that we had not heard about it. It had not been released. The FBI held that news conference the day the body was found and talked about basically, they talked about one backpack, or maybe they were talking about the wet bag. We then learned there was a wet bag and a backpack. So now we know, okay, and a notebook and some other things. But you wondered what was in the backpack, or what was in the two backpacks. And then, of course, you wonder where. We'd like to know, I would ask, where was the weapon found? Did he commit suicide where he was found, or was the body brought there by animals out there? All those questions are unanswered unless the FBI holds a news conference.
Yeah. And
now you wonder, obviously, my big thought would be, what happens next in the Petito case, in the Petito homicide? Does Brian somehow go from person of interest to more than that? Everybody believes at this point, they suspect that he did it, but he still is only a person of interest. Will that change in the coming days or weeks?
Very curious to know where this goes next. There has been a general overall blueprint for how this was going to be conducted as far as the public release of information. Walt, you and I have been talking off-stream and on-stream the last month or so. We knew that after Brian Laundrie's remains were found at the Carlton Reserve, we knew that the autopsy report was the next logical step.
Yeah.
We knew that probably the next time we would be on stream with a significant update to share with our audience would be when we have this document that is now published online and a public record. It's here in the center of your screen, clearly. We knew that when this document was public, we would have that update to share with people. But now that we have this, we don't know where this goes from here. There's no logical timetable for the next update to occur. The next steps are for this to go back now to Gabby, I think.
Right.
This now returns back to Gabby Petito.
Which is still an open case. That's an open investigation.
Ongoing investigation.
Yeah.
And I want to read, and if I'd like to, and it's been published all over. It's not on my Twitter page yet, but it's all over social media. Interestingly enough, Rick Stafford is the attorney for Gabby Petito's family. Nicole Schmidt, Joe Petito, Tara Petito, and Jim Schmidt. All of them being jointly represented by Rick Stafford, who you might have seen in the Dr. Phil interview. And they responded by, they say that they're not going to be releasing a statement, and they did so by releasing a statement, which always is interesting. So the non-statement reads in the form of a statement that reads as follows. The Schmidt and Petito family has been aware of the circumstances surrounding the suicide of the sole suspect in Gabby's murder. Gabby's family will not be making a statement at this time due to the request of the United States Attorney's Office and the Teton County Prosecutor's Office. The family was asked to not make any comments and let the FBI continue their investigation. The family was also asked to wait for the U.S. Attorney's Office to make a determination on whether any additional individuals will be charged. When that determination is made, we will have a statement. This non-statement tells us something.
That's a lot of information in that.
Tells us a whole lot.
The last two sentences. Read the last two sentences.
Listen
charged.
The family was also asked to wait for the U.S. Attorney's Office to make a determination on whether any additional individuals will be charged. When that determination is made, we will have a statement.
When, not if. Now, of course, when that determination is made could mean they determine not to charge anyone else.
But what this reads to me is that
they are looking into it, right?
Exactly. That they haven't they haven't come to the conclusion that no one is going to be charged other than the use of unauthorized the debit card fraud. Other than that, put that aside for a second. They haven't made a determination yet that no one is going to be charged in this case. They haven't come to that conclusion as to whether charges are going to be filed in relation to Gabby's death or in relation to Brian's death or what.
Significant though. Very significant, because that's the first really we've heard anyone on the record, not speculating, anyone on the record actually say that the FBI or intimate that the FBI is seemingly, from that statement, if you read it again, looking into potentially charging someone else.
The family, I'll read midway through, the family was asked to not make any comments and let the FBI continue their investigation. There's this belief out there, Walt, online, that this is done. That the FBI they have the cause of death for Gabby, they have the cause of death for Brian. Gabby died of manual strangulation in Teton County. Brian Laundrie died of suicide at the Carlton Reserve. All right, what's the next case? No, that's not how this works. The FBI is still continuously investigating the deaths of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie together. It's all part of one joint investigation effort by the FBI. And we don't know what the next logical step is, but the pendulum swing would lead you to believe that the next step, it all goes back to Gabby. And people want to know, and procedurally, people want to know, that is an ongoing and open homicide investigation by the FBI. And now there's going to be, and it all depends wherever you're watching from. I want to make this clear. Walt has been on the record in stating that the public demand for answers and information, that is heard by the FBI. The FBI isn't like this concrete wall that you can't get past. The FBI is very cognizant and very aware, like you have said, Walt, and to use your words, that they want their good press.
Sure.
They want their moment in the spotlight. They are very much aware that the public still has a demand for answers in this case. But I think it really falls on wherever you're watching from, I'm speaking to you, our audience, wherever you're watching from, to continuously look for updates on this story, because if the public goes quiet, there's less of that demand, that public demand for answers. Now, I think that the FBI is going to continue their ongoing investigation regardless of the fervor that is out there from the public, but the public continuously pressing for answers will, in all likelihood, hopefully, down the road at some point, a day from now, a week from now, a month from now, some point, get us to that big release of information where we know what happened to Gabby Petito and what happened then subsequently to Brian Laundrie.
Yeah, and so now you just wonder what sort of evidence did they have before they lost sight of Brian to sort of close that gap between person of interest and suspect. The attorney for the Petitos and the Schmitts call him a suspect, but he's not. And again, the difference between person of interest and suspect, if you look at the legal definition, it's very, very close. So it's not a huge jump, but what sort of evidence could they have at that scene in Wyoming to pin the case, pin the crime on the man?
DNA
right there, that guy right there.
Could there be DNA? Is DNA part of it as far as the remains that were discovered in Teton? We don't know. We don't know what kind of evidence was on the remains of Gabby Petito? We don't know.
And the shocker, I mean, there's been many shockers in this story.
Yes.
Like one after another. But if someone else ends up charged, that would be quite the twist, I think. That would be a big, big twist. I know people are out there going, oh, no, I know who it would be, or we could suspect who it would be. But to me, that would be a huge twist that I don't think we saw coming. Many people might have seen it coming, but we did not see it coming if and when that happens, if that development happens.
So we're about to start answering your hashtag HJB, hashtag HWalt questions and comments and start going over this. This is what we do interactively to carry the conversation forward, as we bring you into that conversation, because you, our audience, matters deeply to us as far as what you're saying on social media. But as far as the next steps, what is next? We don't know. We don't know what the next logical step is for the FBI. We don't know what the next logical step is for Northport Police, if they have any logical next step for them, for their agency. But it all swings back to Gabby and the Justice for Gabby calls that are online and more than online, on banner planes, on signs, on bumper stickers, on you name it. But it all really falls down to the FBI and where they are in their investigation and what they have found. Now let's get to some of the questions that have come in on social media now that we have that kind of in the rear view mirror. And we've had a bunch come in the last several minutes. Again, right now you can use hashtag HJB or hashtag HWalt to file in your question, your comment, or if you don't want your comment to be featured and spotlighted like we're about to do with who's first up, Lean J Holiday, like Lean's comment here. If you don't want your comment spotlighted like this, don't use the hashtag. We'll let your comment just scroll up on the screen. Lean here, hashtag HJB, where is the gun? And then throws up the, yeah, I'll do it, the shrug emoji. Yeah. Where's the gun?
Well, you know what? They might not have the gun.
Or they might. Or they might.
They might, but they might not have the gun. I mean, because, but have we seen them out there since they found the body? Not really. Remember when they found the body? They created a perimeter around a pretty from the sky. It looked
like a really weird polygon shape from your your 8th grade geometry class. It was kind of all over the place. That's right.
Normally at a crime scene they might use fence posts or something, or cars or something, but they had to use trees. I mean, is that when they were looking for the gun? But here's the thing. That's a great question. That is probably the number one. If you redid that article you did a couple weeks ago that did really well, great information, right? That's got to be that's the new number one, isn't it?
Where's the gun?
Where's the gun? Where's the gun? But again, they don't have to have a gun, right? All they have to have is a wound and a bull.
Let's point out the painfully obvious. Somebody in as dark and as grim as this is, just bear with us for a second with a suicide, with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. You're taking a firearm, you're pulling the trigger. And then, provided that it is a lethal wound to that individual, the firearm then drops.
Sure.
And drops either would remain in the hand of the individual or it drops beside the individual, provided that, again, it is a fatal firing of that firearm. So then the remains would then, in essence, be right there with where the firearm is. So is there any chance that with the waters of, and just bear with me here, the waters of Carlton Reserve and how deep the water was there, and also too, let's not forget the wildlife there at the Florida at the rural Sarasota County Reserve, that is Carlton Reserve. Is there any chance the remains were drifted a bit and the gun is elsewhere? Is that even within the realm of possible?
Absolutely. I think it could have. I mean, so it's drier when this happens, theoretically, beginning of September sometime. It's drier, and then we have a rainy September. But are you? I mean, we're
not talking miles. We're talking feet, right? We're talking yards, feet.
But in a wetlands type area, do you go out to where it's slushy, muddy, and all that? I mean, I would imagine that area, that if it was underwater, was still at least damp during that time. Does someone wander out there to do something like this, or is it possible they did it one place and the body got dragged over there?
And this I want to bring up Josh Benson's point from our previous stream. This is the type of question that you have when you send out a press release and don't do a press conference.
Yeah.
Because now you have a press, and again, we'll show it here on screen. We have this press release, and we'll throw up, Lean, thank you for your comment. We'll throw up Rachel's comment here, hashtag HJB, hashtag HWalt, where did he get the gun and where is it now? We'll come to that in a second, Rachel. But when you have a press release and not a press conference, there's no opportunity for then follow-up questions. We have sent in follow-up questions. We're not getting any responses right now. But the big one would be, what's the status of the gun? Does the FBI have a gun in their possession, a gun that would match the ballistics and the thorough examination that was done of the skull? Is there a firearm that they have in possession that they believe is the gun that Brian Laundrie used to commit suicide? We don't know. We don't know if the FBI has that gun, and that leads us now to all of these questions. Versus if you have a press conference, we're able to ask that question straight up.
Keep in mind, medical examiners generally do not have news conferences.
Well, the Teton County coroner did.
I know that was unique.
That was
very unique.
Very unique.
Extremely unique. We generally, for these cases, you may get an interview with a medical examiner or the person who conducted the autopsy, but they don't hold a news conference unless it's on a TV show. So you're looking for the FBI or the Northport Police or the Sheriff's Office.
And this is why I've told this story before when I was at home and I got this alert. I was cooking and I got the alert on my phone that the Teton County coroner has called a press conference. I said, I was in disbelief. I said, what?
No, I get that. Yeah,
and it's because clearly in Florida it's irregular enough. They
everywhere.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's get to Rachel's comment. Hashtag HJB, hashtag HWalt. Where did he get the gun? Where is it now? Well, where is it now? Clearly we don't know. But where did he get it? What is there any information, Walt, as an investigator, as an investigative journalist, when it comes to tracking down whether or not somebody has a permit for a firearm?
It depends on the state, and I'm going to look it up. I've tried to do it in other states because we've had stories we've looked into where so-and-so was using his address to get his friend, the felon, a gun, that type of thing. But that was not public information. I'm going to say it's probably not public information here. And then, of course, we don't even know if it's a registered firearm. Where did he get the gun? That's a good question, but not hard to get a gun. And where is it now, of course, is the million-dollar question. The interesting thing, reflecting back, is when the FBI told us only that he had some personal things, including a notebook. I'm still kind of curious. I'd like to ask that FBI agent, on or off the record, why'd you mention the notebook? The notebook has been this tease, right?
Yeah.
And how do you mention a notebook if you have a gun?
If they had the gun at that time, they
don't have to tell us.
But then why mention the notebook?
Well, I said this to somebody on Twitter. If the notebook has created all these questions, I've heard notebook. I'm curious. I want to see the notebook. I want to see the notebook. I want to see what it's like. I want to see what kind of notebook it is. I want to see, did he sketch in there? Did he write? Is it a journal?
There have been pictures on social media of Brian Laundrie writing into various notebooks and journal or what appears to be journals, and that's
as much of a tizzy as the notebook has put many of us in. Can you imagine what the gun would mean?
Yeah.
The gun would be something else. So is that why the FBI didn't mention it? Did they mention the notebook to not throw us off, but you know what I mean? Did they mention the notebook to give us something? Or I was surprised. The FBI doesn't mention anything.
I'd like to know. The special agent in charge of McPherson was the one who made the comment. I'd be dying to ask if I could ask him just kind of like an off the record questions. We do when we talk to law enforcement officials.
Mention the notebook?
I would just say, did you go into the press conference thinking that okay, I'm going to talk about the backpack and I'm going to talk about the notebook and that's it? Was that the game, or was it just kind of a spontaneous? Yeah, these are the items that we found. Were you winging it, so to speak, in that press conference?
By the way, there's two bags. There's the there's the backpack, and there's the other bag, and you just want. There's got to be a lot of stuff in there that we'd like to know what was in there, and nobody's told us anything yet. Interesting
indeed. So Rachel, to answer your question, where did he get the gun? That's now a new question. Where did he get it? Where is it now? What's the history behind it? Claudette Woods, hashtag HAB. I'm not buying it. There's some people out there that no matter what information, whatever law enforcement agency, it could be the FBI, it could be Northport Police. It could be the medical examiner, the coroner standing right next to you. All of these officials could be screaming from a rooftop, Brian Laundrie is deceased, and they're still going to be.
What is she not buying? She doesn't think he's deceased. She thinks it's.
I don't know. Claudette, let us know.
By the way,
AJB.
under Section 790.0601, personal identifying information of an individual who has applied or received a license to carry a concealed weapon or firearm is confidential and exempt. I don't know. I'm assuming that means that we cannot.
So we're not going to find out. We're not going to find out.
And again, we don't know whether or not he could have gotten it somewhere else. We do know from a story that I don't think we reported, but we looked at. Brian Laundrie did take Brian Laundrie with a matching birth date of Brian Laundrie. Did take the written test that is the first step to becoming a police officer, but he never entered into a police recruiting class. So there was some time over the last 2 or 3 years interest from Brian Laundrie to become a police officer, but again, did not ever enter into an academy. He did pass Brian Laundrie with the same birth date, who's from Florida, passed that test. We were never able to actually have anybody confirm it was the Brian Laundrie, but it would seem to indicate that same birth date, same name. So does that make him closer to having at least an interest in a weapon? Perhaps, but there's no reports of that other than. It's all speculation still.
Ryan, #AJB, do we know who the gun found in the water at Fort DeSoto belongs to? What are the odds that someone else shot him? No, this is a self-inflicted gunshot wound, as we've strenuously pointed out, based on what the FBI, the medical examiner's office has discovered as far as their examination of the remains forensically, the Brian Laundrie remains, that dental records and DNA analysis is confirmed is Brian Laundrie. But as far as the firearm that was found at Fort DeSoto, there's no evidence whatsoever that the firearm that was found at Fort DeSoto, the camping ground there, has any connection to Brian Laundrie whatsoever. And to make that connection, let me just make this clear. Making that connection would be irresponsible. I think that people naturally want to wonder. It's okay to wonder, but to say that one has to do with the other is definitively irresponsible, and it's misinformation. Do not believe it. Don't share it. Don't spread it. We know that the gun was found at Fort DeSoto. We know that Brian Laundrie died but there's timeline complications there that just don't add up. So,
and as far as what are the odds that someone else shot him? Look, we are often looking for more efficient government, and along those lines, we appear to be critics of government spending. But I do believe when a news release is handed out, I do believe that this is an accurate news release. And maybe I'm wrong, but I would say I'm 99.99999 repeating % sure that they know this was a suicide. And the reason you know it's a suicide are things like proximity, the way the wound is, or even the way that where it is, and was there anything that would show gunpowder residue, anything like that. So they're not going to come out with this if they don't know what they're talking about. And so I would say the odds are slim to none.
I just got a fascinating comment, and I want to shout it out from YouTube. And hopefully it's not scrolling so fast so that, Carrie Scogan, #AJB. And I just didn't think about this. I didn't think about this. What about the gun? What about the gunshot? Wouldn't somebody have heard the gunshot? I didn't think of this. So the Carlton Reserve is very rural, but he wasn't that far into the Carlton Reserve. So there's a gunshot at the Carlton Reserve.
What if it was 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, though?
That's true, too.
And, okay, you heard the gunshot. So
it's not all that strange in Florida to hear gunshots in rural counties or in rural areas.
But it's a great question, and it's a great thing to wonder about. Yeah, I mean, somebody would have had to hear it.
Gunshots can be heard from more than a mile away. They can, especially in rural places. But I don't know if anybody in rural Sarasota County hears a gunshot and blinks an eye.
Sure,
it's right. It could be a variety of different things. But in living in rural places, sometimes you do. You'll hear.
And sometimes not so rural places. Sometimes you do, right?
Yeah. I won't tell stories. But Let's get to the next comment, and it comes in from Anne-Marie Maynard. Hi, Anne-Marie. Hashtag HAB, hashtag Walt. Was there a suicide note in the notebook or bag? Yeah, we don't know.
Something like that's not going to be released by the coroner. That's going to be the FBI. That's going to be another investigative unit, I would believe. And then if it's an ongoing investigation, as the family attorney for the Petitos and the Schmitz indicate, they're not giving us any of that because they may still be running down this or that, and somehow someone else was involved. We don't know. We don't know. So I think we will get a release of information and hopefully have a news conference where there are questions that can be asked. But at this point, we don't know that, and I would not expect to know that from a county coroner. Although the attorney for the Laundries, I wouldn't be surprised if he had some of that information.
I'd be very curious to know if the Laundries know anything about the notebook or about a potential suicide note.
They might.
It's yeah. as far as people who have in the past take their own life, it's not uncommon for there to be a note left behind. And this is why you echoed it. I'll echo it again for the 40th, maybe 50th time. Still can't believe they dropped the detail about the notebook. Yeah. Because now the notebook fuels, is there a suicide note in there?
It fuels a lot of questions.
It does. And more than anything.
Was there a confession of some sort? I just feel like if there was, we'd already know. But again, if it's an ongoing investigation, no matter who's being investigated, that's the type of thing you keep close to your vest if you're an investigator until the investigation is done. You don't want anybody who might be a suspect or a person of interest to know anything more than what they know. And maybe even there's a psychological advantage to putting out there, hey, there's a notebook. Because what if you put it out there as an investigator? If I was writing a movie about it, this is what would happen. If you put it out there as an investigator to sort of pique the interest of someone else who was involved and maybe, shake them up a little bit. Oh, what's in the notebook? What's in the note? What did Brian write? Did Brian write something about what I did, what I might have done? I mean, all that stuff is part of the fascination with that notebook. And like you said, JB, fascinated that they even mentioned it.
It's very out of the ordinary, yes. out of the realm of what is usually done by the FBI. Some other comments before Walt's got to get going. I think we're going to be streaming till about roughly 5 Eastern, Walt. Is that
yeah, that works for me.
That lines up with your timeline? Good.
Yeah.
Lisa Tomlinson, we're giving you a 2-for-1, Lisa. Hashtag AJB, hashtag Hey Walt. So he shot himself, no FBI conference. And then we'll do this in 2 parts for Lisa. So here's Lisa's first one. Again, no FBI press conference at this time. The FBI, Josh Benson and I had a rare moment of disagreeing on our previous stream, just based on our experience, Walt, where he was talking about how he believes that there's going to be an FBI press conference, or there would be an FBI press conference to announce a detail like this, given how large in scale and scope and the audience that this investigation has, as far as internationally and people wanting answers. He believed that there was going to be a press conference of some kind. I thought that it would be sort of surprising if there was a press conference. Given where we are right now, what's your take on it? Press conference, no press conference? Do we?
It's not unusual that there would not be an FBI press conference to announce a
medical examiner's report.
A medical examiner's report. That's not unusual. Yep. I think the FBI will hold a news conference at some point, but if they have something to announce, they will.
Right.
Exactly. If for some reason they determine if the Petito case is ever closed, I think there'll be a news conference, whether they can say that they have that Brian Laundrie did not do it, any of that. If that happens, I think there'd be a news conference. But if things are inconclusive, which they may still be, which it sounds like the Petito and Schmitz attorney says that things are still inconclusive, it's not a surprise to me they haven't held a news conference because they don't have anything to announce. The FBI doesn't announce a coroner's results from Florida. That just wouldn't happen. 2 different agencies, a state agency or a county agency and a federal agency, they're just not going to do that. I would say they didn't have a news conference because they don't have anything to say yet. And according to what we're hearing, they're still working on this case.
Folks, all right, so no FBI press conference. I just got in a note that I want to pass along to our audience. I got to talk with our WFLA team here for just a moment because it's important. And I don't want to speak out of turn or speak on information that, let me step away. What we're going to do for a moment, we're going to stay just on this shot. I'm just going to mute our microphones. We're going to stay on this shot for a moment. I need to confirm some details here with our team members. Stand by. Back here with you, everybody on stream. Just shot a text over to Stephen Bertolino, attorney for the Laundrie family, representing, he of course represented the entire family, Brian Laundrie, Chris Laundrie, Roberta Laundrie. And I asked Mr. Bertolino, did Brian own a firearm? He says yes. Do you, and then I asked him two follow-up questions, and being really transparent with our audience here, do you or your clients know if it's the firearm he used in the suicide, and do you know if it's been recovered? And he says, I don't know to either. So either of those two questions have been...
it's important because he's known a lot along the time that he's been able to share with us.
And let's not forget, because in addition to, he's been a long time legal representative and legal aid, a friend of the family, really. He represents the Laundrie family and has for a considerable amount of time. Just always been there at their attorney, as we understand it, going back to their days in New York. So he knows that Brian owned a firearm, but we don't know if that's the firearm that he used in the suicide, and we don't know if it's been recovered. But
I would think he would know. If anybody knew, I would think he would know. That's just my thought.
I'm curious. I mean, at this point, he's being extremely accessible. He's responding to messages, so that's
interesting. But again, you ask good questions. We don't know whether that was the firearm used, and we don't know whether they have it. And I'm not sure how much any of it matters, right? Does any of it matter? I think the biggest question might be that does matter. But again, Brian's no longer with us, so does it matter? I think in some ways it matters. When did he do it? Do we have a time frame for when he did it? And if so, were police looking for him, and were they looking for an armed man? That matters.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is the FBI and conducting their search of the Carlton Reserve and Northport Police. Remember, we've showed you endless video, and we'll scroll ahead to some of the video here of the of the search efforts at the Carlton Reserve moving forward here. There's Cassie Laundrie. Yeah, these search efforts. Did they know at the time, excuse me.
They didn't say they knew.
That they were searching for somebody who was potentially armed?
If they knew, wouldn't have they would have said that?
I don't know, but would they?
Warn to warn the public?
Do you?
Or did they know early on that this was a suicide? Well, but that wouldn't have happened because they named him a person of interest. So
they named him a person of interest. They say that they're searching the Carlton Reserve, just trying to put 2 and 2 together here.
I would think if they knew he was armed back then, they would have said it.
Lisa Tomlinson, #HeyJB. We want to know about the gun, the notebook, the DNA results from both. So DNA, we know that DNA is now officially a component. We've known, listen, it's the FBI. Their DNA is at the fabric of and the foundation of any investigation effort like this as far as being conducted by the FBI. You don't need a degree of any kind to know that information. But interestingly, back to the document here, and we'll put away Lisa's comment for just a second. The manner of death has been determined to be a suicide, and the confirmation of the identity of the remains are both dental comparison and DNA analysis. So DNA analysis, there is a DNA profile that exists of Brian Laundrie, and they used it to confirm that the remains found at the Carlton Reserve are Brian Laundrie. It wasn't just the dental record. So there's the DNA sort of component. And then Moretta, your comments up next in the queue. #HeyJB, do they have DNA? Yeah, they've got DNA, but do they have, but then how expansive is the DNA evidence that they have in their possession? What kind of DNA evidence do they have as far as Gabby Petito's remains? And is there any connecting sort of DNA evidence between Gabby Petito's remains and Brian Laundrie himself? We don't know. And then Shannon Chenoweth here, #HeyJB. Would they be able? This is a good question. Would they be able to determine the type of gun used? And I think what Shannon is asking here, based on the forensic examination of the remains, can you determine the kind of firearm that was used?
Maybe. It would.
Maybe,
I would say it would depend. Was the bullet?
Maybe the caliber
was
of
the bullet
bullet
there? Or do they just have? It's not to be too gruesome. Do they just have a hole in a skull? And if you have just a hole in the skull, I don't know the answer to this. Can you determine what sort of caliber that is? Maybe because a bigger caliber would do this and a smaller caliber would do that. And then if you do know the caliber, do you backtrack it to this gun that Mr. Bertolino says his client's son had? And then you know it's Brian's gun. But again, it's all sort of a side, sort of only a side of this, because you think about it. At the end of the day, he's dead, and the gun was not used in another crime. We don't believe so. The need for the gun to me seems somewhat minimal.
I'm sorry, I'm shooting a text.
That's all right. That's all right. Is it interesting how this happened today? It was almost like they wanted it to happen before the holiday or something, because you wonder how many calls is that coroner's office getting a day, every single day, right? A lot.
Well, yeah, I'm sure just like the Teton County coroner's, phone bill, I'm sure, went down. I'm sure it's going to be the same for the District 12 medical examiner's office. Now that we have this, let's just kind of end out here as we're coming up on 5 o'clock Eastern, and we'll go a couple more extra minutes just because we were silent there for a moment as we were just kind of assessing some information that was coming in. Let's just have a human element here for a second and just speak to just, again, how tragic this is of a situation. Young couple, 20, think of where you were at 23 or 22 years old.
Yeah.
22-year-olds engaged to spend the rest of their lives together, go on a cross-country road trip. Something terrible happens on the road. Clearly something terrible happens on the road. Gabby Petito dies of manual strangulation. She is killed by manual strangulation in Teton County, Wyoming. Brian Laundrie returns home. He's home for several days, goes camping at Fort DeSoto, and then leaves, goes to the Carlton Reserve, and it's believed that soon thereafter, at some point in the near term, then takes a gun and shoots himself. This is bottom line, there's been so much finger pointing going on, and just put your fingers away for 5 seconds, and just this is just a tragic story. It's a tragic story. It's gut wrenching, and it's decimating to these families, to the Petitos and Schmitz, and to the Laundries. And I know that there's been finger pointing. I know that there's been blaming. I know that police themselves have endured a lot of heat. But what it all boils down to is an extremely tragic set of circumstances, a set of events that occurred between a couple that seemingly was in love publicly on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, but privately was having some difficulties in their relationship. And we don't know if those difficulties had anything to do with Gabby's death definitively at this time, but it just gives you this sinking feeling, because how many people in this country have had instances of domestic abuse and domestic violence, right, Walt? And you just never want it ever to escalate to the point where we have 2 people dead, each member of the couple dead. It just is the worst, and it's a tragedy first and foremost through and through.
It goes, when you look at that video that we've been showing, it really goes to the synthetic nature to some degree of many, if not of social media accounts, because this was a movie, a beautiful movie with 2 young people heading with big dreams and driving through one of the most unique and remote parts of our country.
An adventure. It was an adventure.
An adventure that started out, and there's great happiness, and then it just evolved. So it really makes you, again, it does bring up a lot of questions about a lot of social media. When you look at, people only show the best, absolute best, most people that is, the best side of their lives. And that's what this couple was doing. She wanted to make a living at doing that. And yet what was going on behind the scenes was we suspect was troubling because of how it ended. And then it ends with one young person dead, and then now we find out the other one commits suicide.
For those of you who have stuck around with us on this stream, we just got some new information here in a moment ago, and it comes in the form of Stephen Bertolino responding to the text that I just sent while Walt was speaking, and then also via Brian Enton of News Nation. Brian Enton sharing, when Brian Laundrie was reported missing, his parents turned over all their firearms, but one was missing. That's according to Laundrie family attorney Stephen Bertolino. And then if you add that with what I just found out, that the firearm that Brian had is no longer with Chris and Roberta presently. So, and I'll confirm this here, Brian Laundrie had a firearm on him. He did have a firearm. He owned one. He owned the firearm.
But we don't know if he had it. Did someone say he had it on him?
They turned over all their firearms. The family turned over all their firearms. One was missing.
We don't know where that gun was, though. Now we can only assume that Brian Laundrie had it. Correct?
I'm gonna clarify that with Bertolino. Give me a second here, Walt.
So it would be and obviously the question would be, what caliber firearm was it? But then again, we may not get that from the medical examiner's office, although that is something they surely could release. I don't see the harm in releasing that, but that is interesting, and that brings us back to the early parts of this investigation, back when, even probably to the part where there was hope that Gabby Petito was still alive. But as we know, Gabby Petito allegedly killed between the 28th and the 30th. Brian Laundrie returned on the 1st. Gabby Petito reported missing on the 11th. Brian Laundrie was apparently already in the woods by the 13th. Is that right? 13th or 14th? He was 14th. He was already in the woods of the reserve.
I'm sorry, say that again. I was texting.
By the 13th or 14th, Brian, my point is, we knew about the gun missing early on, I would assume, right? Sometime after Brian had already been to the woods of Carlton Reserve.
Well, you talking about the public, or talking about the FBI knowing?
Well, I remember that jogged my memory about the confiscation of the gun. So maybe we did know a gun was missing. And somebody pointed out to me the Daily Mail or something had reported something along those lines. That just came to me. Daily Mail later told Daily Mail that one of the family's guns was missing when Laundrie vanished. That's according to somebody on Twitter. So I don't know. But it is unclear where the gun is now. That's, I guess, what's important.
Just one more text. And I'll share. Bertolino just texted me back here, so.
These videos that we show you just bring you back to when this case was so different, and it seemed to evolve every single day in the early going. New developments. And this is I guess, one of the final developments, really, we would suspect, depending on what happens next with the FBI investigation. Obviously, the homicide case is still open with the FBI. That has not been closed. We have not heard that, and I know they would report it if it had been closed, and it's not closed, still an open case.
I just asked him, the one firearm that went missing, is it the one that Brian owned? Like Brian himself owned that firearm, and Bertolino says that it's not confirmed at this time.
There you go. So just keep in mind, out in the real world, where we don't have rules about what we can say and can't say, we know a gun's missing, but we're not going to make the jump to say that's the gun that Brian had, because we don't know that. And even the attorney does not know that. And again, I would go back to, I'm not sure why any of it matters.
Confirms it was a pistol.
Confirms it was a pistol that he owned. Brian owned. That's very good, because we're talking about now. But again, we don't know that's the pistol that was out there. We don't know whether they found the pistol. And I'm going to say it again. I'm not sure why it matters. It mattered at one point when that dog was out looking for Brian, and the officer controlling that canine was out there, because at that point there was danger for the canine, danger to the public if Brian was armed. And again, we never had heard he was armed. There was no suspicion, at least by police. I think they would have said it, that he was armed as this case was developing. How long ago now? 2 months? 2 months.
Yeah.
2 months. Wow.
It's been a lot of coverage, and a lot of folks watching here on WFLA Now. We got to get going. Got to be very respectful of Walt's time. I got to get going, folks. I'm going to continue. I'm going to start to share out some of what I've just learned here in the last several minutes on my WFLAJB Twitter accounts, Facebook accounts, YouTube, social media. I'm going to share out on social media some of the things that we have learned in the last several minutes. Got to get going here, folks. Big thanks to 8 on Your Side Senior Investigator Walt Butel. You'll see him on WFLA News Channel 8, of course, sooner rather than later, I would expect. And, of course, all of our latest is on WFLA.com, the
always
WFLA
interesting
app.
to see what the public thinks, and just to talk through the case. I think it's always interesting to do it in this format.
We're ending all streams on Facebook, YouTube, WFLA.com, the WFLA app. To everybody watching, thanks so much. You can follow me and follow both of us. We're going to be tweeting out some new information as we get it, as we have it, as it's available to us. So follow us on our various social media accounts, but this is going to be ending our streaming coverage, at least for the time being. We're always in standby mode for new developments, breaking stories, and the top stories that we want to hear from you, our audience, about using our hashtag-based system on WFLA Now, but we're ending our streams across all platforms for the time being. We'll see you soon, folks, on WFLA Now.